Shanks is one of the first titular characters we're introduced to in One Piece besides Luffy and Roger, with him appearing in the first chapter of the story and him actually being so important to Oda that he was actually hidden from the one-shot for One Piece Romance Dawn, making his reveal in the story a complete surprise. Red-haired Shanks, also known as Garland Shanks, is the son of the Supreme Commander of the Holy Knights, Saint Garling, and identical twin to the Commander of the Holy Knights, Shamrock. He's currently 39 years old, which would see him be 1 year old by the time of the God Valley incident. Shanks' mother is currently unnamed but is implied to have been a beloved figure on God Valley, as many people on the island took interest in her kids and praised her brilliance. She gave birth to twins at some point in the past, those twins being Shamrock and Shanks. Aside from Shanks and Shamrock, she's the only other red-haired character who received the special shading of the color that Shanks receives. Shanks was found by the Roger pirates in one of the chests on God Valley, implying that Dragon put him in one of the chests after he took him and Shamrock away. Seeing as Dragon was tasked with saving Shanks after his mother was killed by Garling and he and his brother were taken, it's also quite possible that he not only put them in the chest but also left them on Roger's ship so that they would take him thinking he's treasure, since Dragon would know that Roger isn't a bad person from stories Garp might have told him. After being found by the Roger pirates on God Valley, Shanks was more than likely on the crew for a decent portion of time as a baby, since Roger and the rest of his crew reminisce about the time they were holding babies when Oden and Toki joined the crew with Momo and Hiyori, implying that they spent a decent amount of time with Shanks while he was still an infant. It's also entirely possible as well that Shamrock was also with the Roger pirates as a baby for some time and was reclaimed by the Holy Knights later on while the Roger pirates kept Shanks. Shanks was likely left to be raised somewhere in the West Blue after being taken by Roger, as it doesn't seem likely that they would have raised him on the ship, as Shanks says he had a hometown in the West Blue, meaning he did grow up somewhere other than the ship, as God Valley would have been destroyed by that point, so he wouldn't have considered it his hometown. It's unknown who could have raised Shanks during that period of time, but it could have very well been some of the figures in his crew currently, as he does have a lot of old women and men as part of his grand fleet that he treats with endearment. After being raised to presumably the age of 10, Shanks would have then joined the Roger pirates as an apprentice full-time with another apprentice, Buggy. I'm not sure if it's implied that Buggy and Shanks were raised together or if they only met on the Roger pirates, but in Marineford when they speak about Buggy being on the crew, they imply that he's the blood brother of Shanks, which is the same title that Luffy, Ace, and Sabo all share, implying that Shanks and Buggy might have exchanged sake cups in the past the same way that the other three did. Shanks' time on the Roger pirates is unknown, but we know it wasn't for very long, as he would have been 15 years old at the time of Roger's execution. Shanks and Roger had a very close relationship, with Shanks inheriting his straw hat as well as copying his sword style and constantly speaking about his former captain with fond memory. He also constantly visits the members of his old crew, treating them more like family rather than just crewmates. After Roger's execution, Buggy and Shanks would have a falling out, as now that their captain is dead, Buggy would see Shanks as the one who would take up the mantle of finding the One Piece, while Shanks just wanted to sail together with Buggy and have a carefree pirate life. Shanks displayed no interest in finding the One Piece during this time, which caused Buggy to be angry with him, leading to them splitting up and him resenting Shanks for it. Shortly after this, Shanks starts his own crew, with his first recruits being from the East Blue, his first mate being Ben Beckman and his second mate more than likely being Yasop, since Lucky Root would have been from the South Blue. After a few years of sailing, Shanks would then go on to skyrocket through the initial phase of the Great Age of Piracy, with his infamy from his duel with Mihawk, the world's greatest swordsman, echoing through the Grand Line, even reaching the ears of Whitebeard. Mihawk and Shanks' duels are stated to be legendary and implied to end in a draw every time, as Shanks wouldn't gain any notoriety from losing to Mihawk, and Mihawk would lose his title if he ever lost to Shanks. When reading the text in context, it's implied by Whitebeard that they had one singular legendary duel in some translations, and it's kind of implied to have just been one duel by both Shanks and Mihawk, as they speak about settling things, meaning their first battle would have ended in a draw. Mihawk's respect for Shanks' strength from this duel is very clear, as he only considers Shanks to be a match for his strength and is stated to be waiting for someone even greater than Red-Haired to be the one to defeat him, implying that they are both currently equal in terms of power. Sometime during the period of him starting his crew and becoming infamous due to his duels with Mihawk, Shanks would also have another legendary battle that the world will never know about, which is his conflict with Blackbeard. We have no real information on when this battle took place or what the circumstances were, but we do know for one thing, which is that it took place after Roger's execution and him starting his crew, and more than likely was in the same time period as when Shanks was dueling Mihawk, as he would have only ever met Blackbeard in the Grand Line. Shanks' confrontation with Blackbeard would see him left with not only a physical scar but also a mental one as well, with Shanks' scar aching whenever he speaks about Blackbeard, which is the same reaction Luffy gets when remembering Akainu and that Kaido gets when remembering Oden. Blackbeard is implied to have not caught Shanks off guard at all during the confrontation, which is something that he mentions specifically to Whitebeard, implying that Blackbeard in that moment was so terrifying that he was able to get the jump on an on-guard Shanks. After this moment, Shanks would keep an eye on Blackbeard, as he was the only one in the world who was aware of Blackbeard's true strength at that time, till he later revealed it by killing Thatch and leaving Whitebeard's crew. After sailing for a few years and becoming a renowned pirate, Shanks would then go back to the East Blue at 27 years of age, having been sailing for over a decade at that point. Before this, however, he would have more than likely gone to Marie-Joie, as we see him with a mark similar to the one that's present on the God's Knights 2 years prior to arriving in the East Blue. He clearly doesn't have any issue with this fact being known, however, as he was sharing a bath with Gabon, which is when the mark was revealed to the audience, and neither of them mentioned it as being something important, with Gabon speaking to Shanks about him being someone who was supposed to be a child of destiny, implying that there was some bigger hope that at least Gabon had for what Shanks would become in the current generation, quite possibly tying in with his lineage from his mother's side. Shanks would be considered a world-class pirate by the time he met Luffy, as he would have had a bounty over 1 billion by the time he landed on Fuchsia Village. So by this point, Shanks would be world famous, with his considerable strength being well known. The interactions between Luffy and Shanks are well documented, with Shanks inspiring Luffy to want to be a pirate and find the One Piece, and Luffy deciding to set sail so that he can have a ship and crew better than the red-haired pirates, and prove himself as an even better pirate than Shanks by becoming the Pirate King. Shanks' inspiration on Luffy is due to the fact that he was constantly sailing around the East Blue for a year at that point, going on many voyages with his crew and stopping frequently on the island. One of these voyages he went on being the one where he stole the human fruit model Nika from a world government ship. The fact Shanks went on multiple voyages in the East Blue during this time and only after finding the fruit was about to leave, coupled with the fact that Rue had an illustration of the devil fruit in chapter 1, implies that Shanks was only in the East Blue searching for the devil fruit, presumably after learning some information about Joy Boy and Nika on Elbaf, as he tells Gabon there are many things about Elbaf that he'd like to know when they were talking to each other. Shanks' interest in Luffy only truly manifested after he ate the devil fruit, as although he did take interest in Luffy before, due to him saying the same things that Roger did, as Luffy told him his dream which Roger shared, he only ever really saw Luffy as a kid that he liked on Fuchsia Village up until he ate the fruit. After eating the Nika fruit, Shanks decides to bet on Luffy being the one that Roger was waiting for by inspiring him, not only giving up his arm, the one that had the God's Knight symbol on it, but also giving Luffy Roger's hat to hold on to for him until the day he becomes a pirate great enough to challenge him. Shanks' influence on Luffy is one of Luffy's driving motives for continuing to get better as a pirate besides his own dream. Luffy's only really pushing through because he wants to see Shanks again, and he's always speaking highly of Shanks and being enraged whenever anyone would ever disrespect him. After meeting Luffy and moving away from Fuchsia Village, Shanks would then go on to do more infamous things, with the next biggest thing he does being defeating Loki and saving Elbaf 6 years ago, as well as becoming an emperor in that same time period. Shanks defeating Loki would see him be considered as Elbaf's savior, with him earning the respect of the giants as a result, as he would then dock frequently on Elbaf as well. Shanks would have also met Dory and Brogy at some point in time, as they consider Shanks a friend. It could be that they befriended him during the 2 years after sailing back to Elbaf after meeting Luffy, or that they met when Shanks first went to the East Blue to form his crew, as he would have then sailed back through Reverse Mountain and the Grand Line, passing by Little Garden. Shanks being given the title of Emperor 6 years ago would imply that him joining would have been the start of the actual 4 Emperor system, because as far as we know, he wouldn't have defeated a previous emperor to become an emperor, and seeing as the only pirate who would have been worthy of being an emperor at that time before Shanks would have been Shiki, who is unconfirmed in the main story as of right now, it's more than likely that there were just 3 emperors until he became the 4th one. It's likely that after proving his strength against Loki, as well as his reputation reaching its fever pitch due to him stealing the Nika fruit, as well as his crew growing more and more terrifying, that he would then be considered a legend equal to that of Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido. About a year after becoming an emperor, Shanks would also meet the son of his former captain, with Ace finding Shanks on a random island to pay his respects for saving Luffy. Shanks' exploits after becoming an emperor are unknown, but he was presumably just acquiring territory and building his fleet, one which is considered notoriously weak. Shanks' weak fleet is possibly the reason that he has the lowest bounty out of the 4 emperors, despite having the strongest crew and being a formidable powerhouse in his own right. This just goes to show the strength of Shanks' main crew, that he can still be considered an emperor despite the fact that Kid alone could wipe out his entire fleet in a single attack. Shanks after becoming an emperor was essentially just chilling and sailing around the Grand Line, doing whatever he wanted basically, as we can see him multiple times in the story, just being in random places where people can easily find him, with him being found by Ace previously and him being found by Mihawk afterwards during the pre-time skip. Shanks and Mihawk would have spoken to each other about Luffy at some point after Shanks had met him, as Mihawk goes to Shanks to show him Luffy's bounty, saying Luffy reminded him of a boy who Shanks told him about previously. This just goes to show that Shanks' love and faith in Luffy is as great as his love for Roger, as he now speaks to everyone he knows about Luffy. Which, side note, just goes to further prove that Shanks will not be a villain in the future, because there's no way he really tries to trick people that Luffy would probably never meet into thinking that he really likes Luffy. After finding out Luffy's sailing, however, Shanks doesn't make another major move until Marineford. Blackbeard, who has now betrayed Whitebeard and set sail on his own in the same time period that Luffy has set sail, caused Shanks to watch him more carefully as well. I won't go over Blackbeard too much in this video, as I plan on making a Blackbeard explained video, so I'm gonna skip all of his exploits up until the moment that Shanks meets Whitebeard. Shanks meeting Whitebeard takes place after Blackbeard gives Ace into the world government, with Shanks going on to warn Whitebeard about Blackbeard. It's more than likely that Shanks knows Blackbeard's lineage as well as his desire to become the king of the world, as the fact that he decided to warn Whitebeard about Blackbeard just goes to show the amount of stake that Shanks places in Blackbeard being a threat to the world order. Whitebeard in his meeting with Shanks says that seeing Shanks' face reminds him of scars he received in the past, this either being a reference to Garling or Roger. This meeting is also where it's revealed to the audience for the first time that Shanks' hometown is in the West Blue. Shanks' clash with Whitebeard splits the sky, which would actually canonically be the first time we ever see Conqueror's coding used in the series, with us never seeing characters split the sky again until Wano, where Kaido and Big Mom would do it, which is the same arc where the concept of Conqueror's coding is revealed. Shanks' proficiency in Conqueror's Haki has been shown multiple times in the pre-time skip even before it was being stated as a power that people could possess, showing that Oda wants to make it very clear that Conqueror's Haki is something that Shanks has an aptitude for. After this clash with Whitebeard, Shanks would then go on to mobilize his forces to prepare for the war on Marineford, with him going to confront Kaido and King before they could get to the island. This would have presumably been the first time that Shanks and Kaido would interact, and off of this interaction alone, Kaido placed Shanks in the bracket of the only characters in the series who believes has a chance of defeating him. After stopping Kaido at Marineford, Shanks would then go on to end the war by challenging everyone on the island to fight him if they still wanted to fight, with both of the weakened parties choosing to stand down. Whether or not Sengoku decided to stop the fight because Shanks is a celestial dragon or simply because they don't want to fight is unclear, but Shanks does make mention that he's only going along with what Shanks wants because it's Shanks, specifically implying that if it wasn't Shanks, Sengoku wouldn't be following the orders of a pirate. Shanks coming to Marineford would also see Mihawk's exit, as Mihawk has no interest in fighting Shanks in his current state. This just further implying that the fact that Shanks lost his arm upsets Mihawk so much they can't really even stand the thought of fighting him anymore. After ending the war at Marineford, Shanks also issues a direct challenge to Blackbeard, who says that he isn't ready to fight Shanks in his current state, implying that in the future, once he believes he's ready to, he will battle Shanks one more time. Shanks would then give his hat to Buggy to give to Luffy and then reunites with his old brother, with them bantering in front of the entirety of the level 6 prisoners. This would then go on to skyrocket Buggy's infamy, as his crew would not only see Buggy as someone who Whitebeard needed to ask for assistance, but a figure who's able to smack talk red-haired Shanks and come out unharmed. After the war on Marineford, Shanks would then go on to visit Ace and Whitebeard's grave, paying his respects to his former captain's rival and son. Shanks would then go on to sail back to the New World, where he would then just chill again. During the time skip, the red-haired pirates would decimate the Kid pirates, who challenged them, causing Kid to lose his arm before he could ever even see Shanks. Shanks' actions in the post-time skip will consist of going to someone's wedding who is currently unknown, and his move during Wano, where he sails to it after the war on Onigashima to stop Green Bull. This is where his history during One Piece film Red is revealed, with him having a daughter being shown. It's kind of implied that Uta isn't actually Shanks' daughter, but just a child he found in a treasure chest, the same way that he was found by the Roger pirates. The events of film Red in the past are, in my opinion, kind of irrelevant. It's just an adventure Shanks had in the past. I also won't be covering what goes on in the movie, as it's by and large non-canon. However, Uta is implied to be a canon character, as she was shown in the manga during the moment where Shanks decided to stop Green Bull. Speaking of Shanks' children, it's also quite possible that Shanks had a child with Makino during the time skip, as Makino was seen with a brown-haired son younger than the age of 2. Red and green do make a brownish color, so it's quite possible that Shanks stopped by Fuchsia Village again to drop something off for Makino and had a son. But this isn't really confirmed, it's just speculation, since Shanks can just go wherever he wants, whenever he wants, it seems. Before stopping Green Bull, Shanks would then go on to display an interest in finding the One Piece, something that he hasn't shown previously. This would come directly after Luffy awakens his fruit and it's revealed to the audience that it's a Nika Devil Fruit. Shanks' interest in the One Piece is played to be serious, but it's something that takes even Beckman by surprise, as before Shanks told Beckman, it seems as though Beckman was questioning what exactly it was that Shanks wanted to talk about so seriously. I believe Shanks' reasoning for wanting the One Piece now stems from two things, that being Luffy's getting close to challenging him, and so is Blackbeard. Shanks more than likely wants to get the One Piece so that he can stop Blackbeard from acquiring it, and be the ultimate test for Luffy to get it as well. After his actions on Wano for the film Red promo, Shanks would then go on to decimate the Kid pirates off the shores of Elbaf, where he came to visit, with the Straw Hats docking on Elbaf after Shanks had already departed. Shamrock could also then be seen on Elbaf after attacking Loki, and Loki mentions having seen Shanks to Luffy, and since it's shown that Loki can see through his bandages, it's either that Shanks himself came to see Loki or that Loki mistook Shamrock for Shanks, as Loki wouldn't have seen Shanks in 6 years by that point. Something I haven't mentioned as yet is the figure who looks like Shanks who spoke about a certain pirate to the Gorosei. It is more than likely Shamrock, but Shanks isn't yet ruled out as a possibility either. It's quite possible that the pirate he's talking about is Blackbeard, as Saturn reveals in Egghead that he knows about Blackbeard's lineage. I don't believe the Gorosei would allow the Son of Rocks to roam around during the pre-time skip after having left Whitebeard's protection if they knew it was him, as that would have been the perfect time for them to take Blackbeard out. It is possible that the figure doing the reverie is Shanks and not Shamrock, and Shanks debriefed the Gorosei on Blackbeard's lineage. The only thing that's a knock against this theory, however, is that Imu was taking interest in Blackbeard during the same time that Shanks was talking to the Gorosei, implying that he at the very least knew something about Blackbeard before that point, as he possessed the bounty poster from Blackbeard pre-time skip, meaning that he would have started taking interest in him after Marineford. Whether or not Imu took interest because he's Rox's son or because he had 2 devil fruits is something that I'll go over in my Blackbeard analysis in the future, but just to keep it concise, it's not confirmed if that was Shanks, but it's not out of the question for it to be. With everything being said, that's the current history of Shanks explained up until the most recent point in the manga. Shanks is one of the more integral characters in the series, with him being Luffy's direct inspiration as well as an enemy to Blackbeard, who is a contender for the final antagonist spot. Shanks has had a direct impact on every major player in the story, with him reaching Kaido's top 5 and building the relationship with the giants that Big Mom always dreamed about. From his interactions with Whitebeard during the build-up to Marineford to his relationship with Buggy, Luffy, and Blackbeard that I've gone over in this video. Shanks is definitely a character that Oda gives a lot of love in the series, as he possesses some of not only the greatest impact in the series, but also the greatest power shown in the story, with his mastery over Haki going beyond just the normal advancements that we typically see. During extra material, Oda mentions that Shanks would have knocked out all 100,000 fishmen with his Conqueror's Haki, and he's able to kill the observation Haki of others. In the main story, he possesses advanced Conqueror's Haki and Future Sight, and Shanks more than likely would also possess a Supreme Grade Blade in Griffin, as his duels with Mihawk and Yoru would definitely warrant Griffin being considered in that category. Shanks' future in the story from here, in my opinion, isn't too bright, as Blackbeard, now currently being on the move and getting built up as his power is growing more and more, it's only getting close to the inevitable clash that will more than likely end in Shanks' defeat. We haven't had a major death in the post-timeskip the way we did in the pre-timeskip with Ace and Whitebeard, and I believe that major death will end up being the death of Shanks. The death of Ace spurred Luffy on to taking a 2-year break to get stronger, and the death of Shanks would impact Luffy just as much, with him going on to defeat Blackbeard to avenge Shanks, leading to their final battle. I don't see a future where Shanks battles Blackbeard and survives, as a mentor dying trope in anime is something that One Piece hasn't actually done as yet, and it's very clearly going to be done with Shanks from my perspective anyways. Shanks is a character who's kind of a mixed bag in the community, as there are those who have an almost delusional respect for him, as well as those who have a very disingenuous disrespect towards him. He's a character that Oda places great emphasis on as not only being an integral part of the narrative, but a benchmark for those in the current generation to surpass, as he's a direct measuring stick for both Luffy and Zoro, as Luffy aspires to defeat him, and Zoro will inevitably surpass Shanks as well once he defeats Mihawk, since Mihawk is waiting for a man stronger than Shanks to defeat him. Shanks' dominance in this era is something we see time and time again, as we're shown that he's essentially the freest man on the seas, with the only thing he wants to accomplish that he hasn't been able to as yet being the defeat of Blackbeard. Shanks is an example of what Luffy will become once he attains the title of Pirate King, and is more than likely what Roger was when he was sailing in his younger days. He's a character with a very mysterious past but a very clear present, and he's someone beloved and respected by the characters as well as many figures during the current generation. He's clearly the one who filled the role that Roger used to play, even if that wasn't his intention when he first started sailing. With his impact on the story being so great and him essentially kicking the world into motion by inspiring Luffy, it's clear that Shanks was indeed a child of destiny, destined to be the biggest gear driving the current age of pirates. I think I hit the holy grail of content with these character history videos, as these are some of the most interesting things for me in the story, being how the history of the characters lines up over the course of the series, and trying to piece together their timeline through the various flashbacks and supplemental material that we get through the story to try and create one cohesive timeline. Oda likes to drop lots of backstories and pieces, with certain characters being in the background, so I think this kind of video style is a good way to learn about them if you're completely new to the story. If you enjoyed the video, drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Will Shanks possibly die by the end of the story, and will he end up reuniting with Luffy at the end of Elbaf? If you stayed to the end of the video, drop a like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more high quality One Piece content. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.